My name is Drew Garnett. I'm the Chaves County Agricultural Agent. And so I was given the broad topic of spring gardening, and it's an exciting one. I hope you all are planning a garden for this year because there's a lot of wonderful opportunities still available to us, especially for those of you that are further in the north as we are warming up. Luckily, we haven't hit our 100-degree days yet down here in Chaves County yet. It's been oddly cool, and so it is giving us a little bit more time for our gardeners to go ahead and start their gardens. And so this is kind of the outline of what we're going to go through today. So we're kind of going to go through spring cleaning, how to kind of prep your beds and get everything together and ready to go and set up your garden. And then we're going to go into some soil plant prep, some planting, some watering, fertilizing, mulching, and a little bit of pest control. But then we'll finish off, and I didn't add it in here. We'll finish off with a really great resource for you to help plan your gardening and what vegetables to go through and what to plant and grow in your particular area. And so with spring cleaning, the big things are we want to remove any kind of debris. So any of those leaves that we left after this fall, unless they're already composted in or anything like that. But if you planted a cover crop potentially over the winter in that garden, we want to get rid of that so that we can get that soil ready for whatever we're going to plant and proceed with. We definitely want to get rid of the weeds, and preferably if we can get rid of them early. So we are seeing a ton of weeds down here in Chaves County just because the flood that we had back in October really spread the seeds around. And so we've been dealing with weeds in a major way. So, but they're always a problem. And so the earlier you can take care of them, the better, always. This is a great time to clean and sharpen your tools. You'll be able to get so much more work done if your hose and your pruning shears and everything are nice and sharp. It's going to make your gardening life a lot more enjoyable just because you're not fighting your equipment as you work on this project. And then, of course, always address any kind of hardscape issues before you plant. It makes life so much easier if you've got your irrigation system already set up and clean. So turn it on if it is a timer system, turn it on if it's an overhead sprinkler system, whatever it is. Just make sure that everything is working and in order because now's the perfect time to get that cleaned up. Make sure it's working and functional. If you're using raised beds, fix any of those corners and edges. And that's really going to be setting yourself up for success here early on. And then, of course, I like to talk about raised beds, but we're going to talk about just some in-ground gardening as well. And if you were in my presentation a while back with Ready, Set, Grow, you've seen this slide, but I just want to go over a brief overview. So any raised bed is just anything that's freestanding garden bed constructed above the natural terrain. So just above your normal soil line. And you can make it out of anything. So these are obviously pressure treated wood in this picture, but I've built a ton out of pallet wood, which you can usually get for free from the local hardware store or wherever. Usually it's trash somewhere that you can use. You can pile up rocks. You can use some of that tin that blew off your neighbor's yard the last time you had a good windstorm, like we do down here. Um, Unless they want it back, you might give it back to them. But otherwise, it makes a great raised planter bed. And so generally, we're looking at something anywhere from 6 to 8 inches high, but we can also build them up anywhere from 3 to 4 feet high. And you want to, if you are building a raised bed, you want to think about what you're going to be growing in there so that you can plan for what the root structure is of that particular plant that you're planning to grow. Again, this is all personal preference. So be creative and have fun with it. Don't be stressed out about somebody else's or what somebody else tells you should do. You should build it to yours, what you want and what you desire out of it. In-ground gardens. So again, this is one of the more simple ones that we can utilize because we already have the soil there. All we have to do is get rid of any existing vegetation that may be in the area. So if it's just grass right now or something like that, you want to get rid of that in order to open up that soil for whatever you're going to be growing. And this is really one of the simplest ways and most economical ways to get into it is just use the existing soil that's already there. Because again, with raised beds, we're going to have to be adding topsoil or compost or other things to it. So it can add up in cost if you don't already have those things on hand. Um, and so we're not really having to create a soil because we're using the existing soil that's already there. And so less initial materials that are needed is really going to help you get a head start if you're just utilizing that existing soil that you already have. And so those are kind of where we generally start as far as our gardens go. And again, with those in-ground, less startup work because generally we're just killing off the grass or whatever was growing there. We can have lower water requirements because you can get a little more heat in the soil in a raised bed because there's more airflow moving around it. You can get a little more water loss. So sometimes with those in-ground gardens, you can actually conserve a little bit more water too. So if that is a concern for you, this may be the direction that you go. And then a lot of times the irrigation system can be a little bit easier to install. Unless you're hand watering, then it's going to be the same problem no matter which way you go. You're always going to need to go out there and hand water it, which is a perfectly great way to water because you're actively paying attention to the soil moisture and you're actively paying attention to what's going on with your plants. Whereas some of us, when we install that nice drip system, we like to set it and forget it, put it on a timer, and a lot of times we can forget that it still can require some maintenance and make sure that it is working properly. But we'll get into that in a little bit. So soil prep, really, we're going to break up that soil a little bit. I know tillage gets a bad rap. However, you really do need to start where you are. So these no-till or low-till systems are phenomenal. However, if the soil isn't at that stage where you can utilize those low-till, no-till systems yet, you can work in organic matter. So you're going to be tilling it up, working in that organic matter, so compost, or if you have access to livestock manure, make sure you do compost it first because there can be some bad bacteria in there. Where I am, we have tons of dairies, so we can get access to good dairy cow manure pretty easily and utilize that in our soil. But we do need to compost it first to make sure we kill any of those microbes that we don't want growing on our vegetables. So don't get too caught up in this idea of no till, low till that really gets pushed. That can be something we work towards. And so initially you got to work with the soil where it is and what you have. And so really all we're doing is breaking up any compaction, improving the drainage and aeration of that soil so that water can get in, so that oxygen can get in, because even your roots need that oxygen. So you want good porosity. So breaking that up, adding that organic matter is really going to help build up that soil. And over time, as you keep adding that organic matter, you're going to find that that soil doesn't get as compacted as often and it doesn't need as much tillage down the road. And that's how we get into that no-till, low-till system. And then a soil test is always a good thing to do too, just to find out kind of your baseline of what your soil is as far as composition, what kind of fertility levels that we have. Now, unfortunately, New Mexico State University doesn't have a soil testing facility anymore. But there are fantastic companies, some in Amarillo, some up in Kansas, that you can collect soil samples. And so what you're doing is you're taking about 8 to 10 samples randomly throughout the garden bed, kind of that top 6 to 8 inches. Unless you're doing trees, that's a different story. You're going to go a little bit deeper, obviously, because you have bigger roots. But we're generally going to be taking that top 6 to 8 inches, about 8 to 10 samples, mix them in a bag, send them off. And so they'll do a test and they'll send back a report to you, and you can get with your local extension agent, and they'll be able to help you kind of comprehend it because they kind of send it in. Um, agronomy jargon sometimes, and so you may understand that completely. But sometimes it's helpful to get somebody else's eyes on it and just kind of help you understand what they're trying to tell you. But it'll break down what you have nutrient wise and what you're lacking and what you probably need to apply. Now, when you do a soil test, I can't stress this enough because I've made the mistake before, and experience is a good friend. But make sure you write exactly what you're planning to do with that soil, so that they will give you a report and a recommendation based on your particular needs out of that soil profile. So if you're going to be doing a vegetable garden, you want to make sure that you apply right vegetable garden to the soil sample. That way, when they look at it, they know, okay, if we're growing vegetables in this soil, what are the needs? This is where we're at. These are the implements that we'll need to add, some fertilizer or whatever the case may be. And I've mentioned this before, but really adding organic matter is going to help you out tremendously. First off, it's going to add some nutrients. Really, what's going to happening is that organic matter is feeding the microbes within the soil profile. As they break down that organic matter, it's then going to break down into base nutrients that the plants can absorb and utilize. But it does so much more than just add some fertilizer to the soil. It really promotes good soil aggregation, which is just the ability of the soil to hold itself together in kind of a spongy form where it's still porous, but that it's going to hold itself together. It's not just falling apart, blowing away in our wonderful windstorms or washing away when we get some rain, but that it's going to hold itself together. It's going to maintain that soil porosity so that oxygen and water can actually get down to the roots. And then because of that organic matter, it has a great ability to really soak up that water that you apply to the soil. So it's going to help you with water retention and really hold on to it a lot better. Now, the one negative that can happen with organic matter is if you let that soil go completely dry. So you're not letting any water, and this is really for a long period of time, that organic matter will dry out so much if you really avoid watering whatsoever for a year or something, that it can become hydrophobic. So it will actually repel water instead of absorb it. But as long as you keep a decent moisture level within that soil profile, as long as you're utilizing that soil, you're not going to have a problem with it. So that's a minor issue that can happen only if we really neglect that soil and neglect that area. So planting, um, knowing your local climate is going to be critical. And we're going to go into a little bit more detail about that, just some helpful publications that will really help you out, tailor your garden for your particular climate. But knowing your local climate is really the first step, but then understanding the microclimates within your garden. And so micro just means small. So we're looking at the small areas of change within our own yard or within our area where we're planning to grow. So it could be something as simple as in this one location where I plan to plant a garden, I have really good morning sun, but in the afternoon, there's a big shade tree that shades out that area. So that's going to change up a little bit as far as what plants will do well in that area and in that particular space. Or I may have on one side of my house is generally well protected from the wind. So I can grow things that are maybe a little bit more susceptible to wind. But on the other side of the house, because it's fully exposed to our southwest winds or your normal winds, um, they can really get beat up over there. So I wouldn't want to grow something like raspberries in that particular area because they'll get beat up by the wind and they won't produce the way I want them to. But I know because I have this small little area over here on the other side of the house that works as a windbreak, I've got this extra little microclimate that is going to protect those raspberries from the wind so that I can grow them right there, if that makes sense. And so make sure you're choosing varieties that will thrive in the conditions that you have. So, the first example I gave was morning sun, afternoon shade, and that's something we're always looking forward to, right? Because our afternoons are getting so hot. But you might also look at some areas that you want to put a garden that has really hot, direct afternoon sunlight. Make sure you're putting plants that can handle that heat and that sunlight in the afternoon. So the more you plan ahead and really think through what you're going to be putting in that particular space is going to help you out tremendously as you're growing whatever it is you choose to grow. But this is just kind of an example in this picture of kind of a microclimate. It kind of gives you an image. And so because of this fence line over here, and I'm assuming there's a house off to the side there that because it says shade from the neighbor's house. Obviously I didn't take the picture, but because of that shade, it's getting afternoon shade. And so the plants that grow in that particular area need to be something that can handle that afternoon shade, that will thrive in that condition. So it may be something that's just real simple that likes good direct sunlight in the morning, but then it can't really handle our afternoon heat in that direct sunlight. And so this is a great location to put some of those more sensitive plants. Um, and so really thinking about your sunlight, your temperature, your wind, moisture, and even soil types, because even within your own backyard, you're going to have slightly different soil types. If you did soil tests all around your house and kind of broke everything up into 10 by 10 areas, you'd find that you have multiple soil types in that area. And so that's again why a soil test is so nice because it really does help you tailor what you're going to grow in that particular area. And so understanding all of these little factors can develop into different microclimates or different growing benefits or struggles in some cases within your yard or within your area, and just kind of understanding that. So spend a little bit of time kind of watching your yard throughout the day, every hour or every 2 hours, and seeing what is happening with the shade, what is happening with the sun, what is happening with the wind, and then plan your garden and what you plan to grow accordingly. And that's going to help you so much down the road because then you're already ahead of the game and understanding that these plants will thrive in this area, these plants won't survive over here, but if I grow them over here, they're going to do just fine. Watering. Um, so we live in a very dry state. I think this spring here in Chaves County is probably the wettest that I've experienced in the last 3 years that I've been back in New Mexico. However, we don't know if we're going to keep getting moisture moving forward. And so we always need to make sure that we have some form of irrigation, some way to get that good water to our plants. And, this is always the thing is like, what is too little? What is too much? But too little water and the plants are going to stress and they'll reduce quality and yield. If you overwater, you can cause root rot or overly vegetative growth rather than producing that fruit or that you desire for your kitchen or for your home. And so, really, the best thing you can do is just take this really technical piece of equipment called your finger and stick it into the soil and check and see if you have moisture down below because you may get some dry, it may look dry on top on the surface, but you may have good moisture underneath. So make sure you're feeling down in there and checking to see that you have moisture, but you don't want it sopping wet. We don't want to reinvent the Florida swamps in our garden because we will kill our plants with too much water in that situation. And so we want that soil to be well draining so that any excess water can move off, but we want that soil to be able to hold and maintain enough water that it's available for our plants as they grow. And so again, use that really technical equipment that you have available to you. Um, After planting your seed, when you're watering, you do want to maintain a moist soil, not soggy, not sopping wet, but keep it moist throughout until they're germinated. And so once they germinate and they really start to grow up, then you can back off the water a little bit. But initially, most most seed, most of our vegetables are going to require that good moisture in order to help them germinate and establish in the beginning. Most seed packets that you get are going to have some of the requirements for that seed, and it's going to vary a little bit between varieties or different vegetable groups. But for the most part, we want to maintain a nice moisture layer when those seeds are germinating and establishing. For established plants, you can water less, but you're going to want deeper watering. So a little bit longer time to allow that water to drain through the soil down to those deeper roots. And this is especially important if you're growing any sort of trees, because trees obviously have very deep roots. So we need to make sure that we're putting some decent water on them for an extended period of time so that water can really penetrate the soil and get to where the roots will actually absorb it. But definitely allow that surface soil to dry out after they're established to promote deeper roots. If you're really just watering the surface, those roots will stay shallow up near the surface of the soil. And the more we can get those roots to grow down and deeper, you're going to have a stronger, hardier, healthier plant in the long run that will survive some of our winds and issues like that. And again, water frequency is really going to depend on your soil type. So if you have a real sandy soil, you're going to be draining that water really rapidly. If you have a little more clay in your soil or good organic matter, it's going to help hold and retain that moisture longer. And so that's really all we're talking about. We're talking about water frequency dependent by your soil type. And so again, sandier is just going to be very coarse. It's going to have a lot of pores, so the water runs through it really quickly. So you may have to water a little more often in that case. Fertilizing. So fertilizing is important because just as we need to eat, and that's probably why you're growing these vegetables, our plants need particular foods as well. And they come in the form of nutrients. And so the best fertility is achieving a balance of organic matter and commercial fertilizer. So as we talked about organic matter earlier, as the microbes in the soil break down that organic matter, it's going to release it as nutrients for the plants. However, generally throughout an entire growing season, there's going to be a time where that organic matter, there's not enough of it being broken down to provide all the needs for your plants that you're growing. So in a lot of cases, using some sort of synthetic or commercial fertilizer, there are some organic fertilizers out there as well that you can apply this way as well. Do not follow the example in this picture. I just stole it from the internet, but don't use the example in this because don't use your bare hand to spread that fertilizer. Wear a glove. You can, if you have some moisture on your hand, you put that fertilizer directly against your skin, you can get a little bit of a chemical burn. So don't do that. Don't do what they're doing in this picture. This is kind of why I put this picture on because I've seen people do this. Don't do this. Also, if you look at the size of that plant and the amount of fertilizer that they are putting on the soil, that is excessive. That is extremely excessive. So don't follow the example in the picture. I literally leave this picture only so I can talk about that. So make sure you apply what your plant needs. You that There's this idea a lot of times if a little's good, a lot more is better. That's not the case. Follow the label. Most of those fertilizer have a label on them as well, helping you guide you in how much to apply. That has been specifically studied for the plants or for that particular soil type that you have. So make sure to follow the label. If you do not feed your plants, they will not produce. So again, when we talked about that soil test, if you do a soil test, you're going to find that there are certain nutrients within your soil profile that may be lacking. And so your plants are really going to need you to add that to the soil in order for them to grow and develop. And so specific functions within the plant are determined based on the availability of specific nutrients. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute. And so if those nutrients aren't available, it's not going to be able to perform that function. And so I apologize that I have May will be on fertilizer. So we're in May, so I'm talking about fertilizer. But I stole this slide from another presentation that I gave at another talk, so I apologize I didn't take that off. So nutrients. So generally we see three numbers on most fertilizer bags, and what that is referencing is the percentage of nitrogen, the percentage of phosphorus, and the percentage of potassium. And so that's what we call the NPK. So if you see a bag and it has a 16-8-8, what that's saying is 16% nitrogen, 8% phosphorus, 8% potassium. Okay, of the bag, that's what's in there. And so that's what it's referring to. And depending on what you're growing, you're going to want to vary those ratios within there. And so if we look at it, so nitrogen is used throughout the plant, but it's predominantly for vegetative or leafy growth. So if you're growing things for their leaf, so lettuces, things like that, they're going to want more of that nitrogen. But if you're growing fruit like tomatoes or something like that, if you're excessive with your nitrogen, you're just going to get a really leafy, bushy tomato plant. You're not going to get a whole lot of tomatoes. And so phosphorus is going to be promoting root development, flowers, and fruit production. So in a lot of cases with vegetables or fruit trees and things like that, there's going to be a little bit more phosphorus in those fertilizer bags, just because that phosphorus is going to promote what we want out of that plant. And then potassium promotes plant health, supports almost all aspects of plant growth, and it's vital for transport of other nutrients. And I have a funny story about this. So there was a tree that was showing extreme iron deficiency in Chaves County, and we kept looking at it and saying, "Oh, this is iron deficiency. You need to add iron." Well, the homeowner was like, "I've added a ton of iron, and there is no difference in this tree." Well, it was right after I started, and so we did a soil test because I was like, "Well, if he's putting iron, we need to figure out what else is going on." And what it was is there was no potassium in his soil. Well, potassium is the building block for the molecule that transports iron. So because there was no potassium, the iron couldn't move up and be utilized by the plant. So even though he had plenty of iron within his soil profile, it couldn't be utilized because there was no potassium. So this just shows you kind of an idea of how important these individual nutrients are for different stages and development of your plants. So nitrogen deficiency. So once your plants are growing and developing, easy telltale. Nitrogen is a very mobile nutrient within the plant. And so the symptoms are usually going to be apparent on the older leaves. So if you have really chlorotic or yellow older leaves, but the new growth looks good, dark green, excuse me, excuse me. That's usually a sign of nitrogen deficiency. And what it is it's stealing the nitrogen from the old leaves in order to promote the new growth. Generally, you're going to end up with smaller than normal fruit, leaves, and shoots on those plants when you are deficient in nitrogen as well. Phosphorus deficiency, so you're going to see this dark purpling a lot of times on the leaves of the plants. So this dark green, purpley color on the leaves. Small leaf size and reduced shoot growth generally when you have phosphorus deficiency. Potassium deficiency, stunted plant growth. It's a mobile nutrient, so we'll move from older to lower, just like the nitrogen will. The margins of the leaf are generally going to burn, well, they'll turn kind of yellowish first, but then they'll burn, in just like this picture in the bottom right-hand corner. But can also be white and yellow spots, as you kind of see in that picture above. Some secondary nutrients that are pretty critical for a lot of our vegetable production is calcium. Generally, we don't have a problem with calcium too much in New Mexico. Usually, we're pretty good on calcium, but if we're growing in a raised bed, or you may have a completely different soil there than I have down in Chaves County for the most part, So it's something to watch out for, but you can get this little top rot on tomatoes and other vegetable crops. Or if you look at the leaves on these strawberries down in the bottom right-hand corner, some of this burning as well, kind of this misshapen leaves. And so those are things to work out for calcium. And then iron. This is probably what I see the most as far as deficiency here in southeastern New Mexico, at least, where iron is not mobile. So you'll see really healthy, older, dark green leaves. But then if you look at the new growth, you're going to see this chlorotic yellow leaf with dark green veins. That is going to be very characteristic of iron deficiency. And our soils here in New Mexico, we generally have a high pH. And so it tends to bind iron within the soil, so it's not readily available to the plant. So make sure you're using a chelated iron that is able to be absorbed and utilized by the plant at higher pH levels. And then, of course, with fertilizing, water a few days before you fertilize. Don't water the day before. Um, so you don't want it sopping wet. Otherwise, you're going to be sticking fertilizer all over the leaf material. Pick the best spreader or tool for the job. Don't just use your bare hand to put out that fertilizer. It's best to fertilize the perimeter than work in to or inward from there. And then, of course, if you're using iron, make sure you get it off any hard surfaces like concrete. Otherwise, that iron within the fertilizer will stain that concrete. Most fertilizer is calculated based on a square foot area. And so length times width is going to give you your square footage. And that will determine how much of that fertilizer you need to apply within that area for whatever you're growing. Mulching is a great thing for garden beds. So you're going to reduce soil moisture evaporation because we're covering the soil with another layer of something that's adding a little barrier between the sun and the soil. So you're going to get less evaporation out of the soil, and it can reduce or prevent weed growth. And so because it's shading it out. And so usually we're applying that mulch again after our desired plants have already started to grow and are developing. That way, we're not suffocating the seeds that we planted, right? But it insulates the soil from temperature swings. So a lot of people will mulch their soils over the winter, especially if they're growing garlic or something like that. It helps reduce soil erosion because you've now got something holding down the soil, kind of keeping some pressure on top of it. So if the wind takes anything, it's going to take some of that mulch rather than your soil. Or if you've got water, you've got another substrate there that's helping slow down the water to the soil so it's not running that soil away. And then it's going to protect perennial plants from freezing. Again, kind of that winter mulching is what we're talking in that regard. So if you have perennial plants, adding a mulch layer is really going to help protect those roots from those hard freezes that we can get. And then on top of it, it's aesthetically pleasing. And so mulching is always a good idea with your gardens. Pest control. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but generally with our vegetable gardens or things like that, we're going to end up with insects. You're always going to have some weeds trying to come in. And so it is important to make sure that you are paying attention to those weeds. Get them while they're young. When they're young seedlings, you can just pluck them out and be done with them. Don't wait until they're a giant plant and then think you can spray something on them and kill them. You want to get rid of them while they're small and while they're young. Diseases, birds will come in and snipe or steal your fruit and just take it away. Rodents, mice, things like that, squirrels will come and take it. So you might think about if you have a ton of birds in that area, if you have a ton of squirrels in that area, you might think about some sort of physical barrier that would help protect them. With insects, so in the picture here, we have some aphids that are feeding. Soft-bodied insects like aphids mealybugs, thrips, white fly, things like that. Honestly, my favorite thing to go to with it is soap. So like a Dawn dish soap or a Palmolive or my favorite's a Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap because it has that peppermint, which helps as well. But that Dr. Bronner's is also what's known as a Castile soap. So it's a little bit softer on that waxy cuticle of your plants. But you can take that, mix that up in like a 1 or 2% solution. So, and when I say 1 or 2% solution, you're looking at about 1 ounce to 2 ounces per gallon of water. So really, a 1 ounce solution is 1 1/4 ounces of soap for a 1 gallon solution. Um, and so then a 2.5 ounce for a 2% solution. But if you do about 1 to 2 ounces of soap per gallon, you're going to be able to take out those soft-bodied insects really quite easily. And then you can spray it repeatedly. It's going to have no ill effects on on you or anything else in your garden. And so soap is a really easy, simple thing that we all have generally in our house anyway. The reason I like the Castile soap is I can spray my plants every 3 days and I can do about 3 treatments. And then usually I've cleaned up whatever pest problems I've done. So I do one treatment and then 3 days later I do another. And then 6 days from that first treatment, I can do my third treatment. And usually I'm cleaned up. If you're using regular dish soap like a Dawn or a Palmolive or something like that, generally space it out about 5 days. And that's just because they're a little bit harsher on that waxy cuticle of the plant. And if you go too often, you can start breaking down that waxy cuticle. Um, and then obviously insects, or I mean pests, they're interfering with the optimal growing conditions of your desired plants. Weeds are stealing nutrients and water. They're competing for sunlight. Insects are feeding directly on that plant, and so they're sucking those photosynthates and those nutrients out of the plant. And then diseases are just going to throw a whole wrench into everything, cause some abnormal growth. If you do have a disease, pull that plant out, get rid of it, and then sterilize your equipment before you go and touch any of your other plants. Try and get rid of them quickly. That way it doesn't spread to your other desired plants. And then we also have, if you ever think you have a disease, the plant diagnostic lab at New Mexico State University will ID that. You just take the plant material into your local extension office and they can get it sent off. They'll ask you some questions and fill it out, but then they'll send it off and they'll get the results back for you. And so that is a really great resource that we have at New Mexico State. But the key to controlling pests in your garden is proper identification. If you are using an herbicide or an insecticide or something like that, not every insecticide kills every insect, not every herbicide kills every weed. And so making sure that you are utilizing the correct product for your specific pest that you have. And so again, reach out to your extension agent and they can help you with identification on those things to make sure that you are controlling what you need to and not just wasting money and time and resources spraying something that's going to have no effect. And if you are using any kind of pesticide, make sure you follow the label. I can't stress this enough. The label is actually a legal document that by purchasing and utilizing, you are agreeing to follow that label. And so make sure you follow the label. Whatever the label rate says for that product, make sure you stay within the parameters of that rate. If you go over, you're going to have worse results. I know it sounds counterintuitive because there's this idea if a little's good, a lot more's got to be better, right? Well, that's not the case at all. And don't use less than the rate either, because on either ends of those extreme, if you're using too much, or if you're using too little, what you're really doing is creating resistance to that product. And so make sure you're staying within inside that labeled rate for proper control. So the kind of where we're going to get to finishing up is there's a lot of great resources on New Mexico State University. Obviously, I work for them, so I'm a big fan. But if you look down here in these bottom most of the area for your garden that you're going to be looking at is going to be within that horticulture box. There will be some within that agronomy box as well that will help you if you are dealing with vertebrate issues. That wildlife area has some ideas for gopher control, for skunk control, for squirrel control. If you need it, if that's a problem in your area, if they're becoming pests. So if you just type in NMSU Extension Publications, you'll be able to find this really easily, and it should bring you to this page. And then when we go to horticulture, we're going to be able to find this particular publication right here. And this is my go-to if I'm planting a garden, if I'm recommending some whatever plant material during a particular season. This is my go-to. And that's Gardening by Zones. And this is Circular 457B. And honestly, you could probably Google NMSU CR 457B, and it should probably bring you directly to it. And so it should be really, really easy to find. And within this, it's going to have a breakdown of New Mexico by different zones. So there's 3 different zones that it has, and it's all based off the average number of frost-free days. And so you can find where you are. So I'm down here in Roswell, and so I'm actually area 1. Up here in Farmington, that's area 3. And again, it's all based off the average number of frost-free days. So those are the amount of days that you can really grow between your last freeze and your first freeze in the fall. And so up in Farmington, you're looking at somewhere around 150 or less. Here in Roswell, greater or equal to about 180 days of frost-free days. And so if you look at these, just some random ones that I pulled up here. So beans, generally, we want our soil temperatures to be around 60 degrees or better before we plant beans from seed. And this is all within that publication. And within that publication, it's also kind of going to tell you, based on the area you're in, when is generally the time of the year that you're going to be planting this, and so that you can get a harvest out of it as well. And so corn, obviously sweet corn, wait until soil temperatures are consistently over 50 degrees. And the reason for that is if you plant that seed too early, and let's say temperatures are 40 degrees, 45 degrees, kind of bouncing around in there, and you plant your corn, that corn seed actually has a potential to rot in the soil and never germinate. And so, but if that temperature is optimal at 50 degrees or greater, it has really high potential to germinate and then develop into the corn plant and produce the corn that we are desiring. Again, tomatoes, 50 degree soil temperatures is what we're looking at. Cucumber, about 60 degree soil temperatures. Are we seeing a consistency here? Kind of looking at that 50 to 60. There are some things that prefer even upwards of 70 degrees. But so a lot of 60 for cucumber, pumpkins, eggplant, asparagus. So if you've been trying to get your garden started early every year and you've been having issues with germination, you might want to take a thermometer and just check your soil temperatures before you plant this year, and just make sure that your soils are reaching those optimal temperatures. Because I know here in Chaves County, actually, we had a delay because we've been a lot cooler than we have been in the last few years. We've had a little bit more rain this spring than we have in the last few years. And so our soil temperatures were actually pretty slow getting up to that 50 and 60 degree range. And so even just about a week and a half ago, some of the area within Chaves County was still under 60 degrees. And so you do want to pay attention to that, and so that you are planting at the optimal time. And this is my contact information if you ever need it, but I always recommend that you reach out to your local county extension agent first, because they are more familiar with your area than I am. Unless you're in Chaves County, then I'm the one you should probably reach out to. But are there any questions for me, or?
If you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or you can insert them in the chat box. I do have a question. Maybe when someone is figuring out a question for themselves. I had a raised bed from last year,
Hmm.
and I haven't really like touched that at all since my daughter has been born.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I've heard countless like different methods as to um okay, so what I've done is the helical culture
Hmm.
method, and I'm not sure whether to like scoop it all out and put it in the pile with all the manure that we have accumulated from our horses, our cattle, and sheep and chickens.
Okay.
Or do I just like, just keep it within the raised bed itself and just turn it? Well,
So
what would they be? What would
you
go
uh,
ahead?
to I'm not extremely familiar with that particular method, but uh, so most of the time you can do either one. So you can choose to either pull it all out and then compost it with whatever compost you have, or you can turn it and add some new compost into the system, and that's really going to save you on how much input you have to put in this year if you are adding that organic matter back in, and you're just turning that soil. So we go back to that tillage idea is, we're breaking up that compaction that kind of happened over the winter and early spring, and we're breaking up that soil, opening it up again, adding good organic matter back into the system to help kind of alleviate some of that compaction, to help refresh the system, help refeed those microbes that are there in the soil. Because if you take it all out, you're going to have to put something back in order to grow it, right? And so you could take
Yeah.
it out and then post it in, and then you've got more compost to do whatever you want with. Or you can just take compost and mix it into the system existing in there. And so really either way should be fine.
Okay. And I'm not sure if you deal with this too. And we don't always turn our manure pile, but whenever we do and we apply it to the field, we tend
Hmm.
to get little tiny like flies. They're not the
Hmm.
flies that you normally see like around you um
Yeah.
when you have food or something, but it's like a striped back type of fly. Um they
Do
just
they?
linger around the field, but they don't,
Mhm.
they only last like for a couple days and they die. Is
Yeah.
that something to be concerned about?
Well, I mean, if they're not biting you, which I wouldn't think they
Yeah.
would be, so my first thought is kind of a flesh fly or even a house fly will kind of have some of that pattern on it. Yeah,
Mhm.
that um, that manure is such a great food source for a lot of flies. And they will hide within that while you're composting it or while you're letting it sit there. And so they will actually overwinter within that manure. So then when you're spreading it out, you're breaking it open, and of course, the
Yeah.
chickens likely come up as well. So they've developed a little bit further. So really, all it is they were in that manure already, and they're just hit enough degree days that they are going to develop into the adult and then be flying around. And so, because then you've
Okay.
spread out that manure and you've broken it up, it's no longer really going to be a great food source for them anymore because it's changed its composition, being incorporated with the soil or being added to that soil, and then drying out because you broke it up. So they're going to leave and go find more manure or another food source in order to lay their eggs and let the next generation come about.
Okay. Thank you.
And so again, here in Chaves County, we're surrounded by dairies less than we used to be, unfortunately. But um, I don't know. I grew up surrounded by flies, so I guess they don't bother me as much anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's
Hmm.
a thing to be proud of, but it's just kind of a yeah.
No, we're fine. They don't bite us at all, but that was just one of the concerns that I had because I was like, I'm not too sure if they're supposed to be in our pile. But that's reassuring. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. Um, would you mind? revisiting the areas where folks can send their soil samples to?
Yeah, so honestly, so I didn't give any specific companies, but they're trying to think of what the name and the one in Amarillo is, but the one that I utilize the most because I feel like I get results back really quickly with them is Ward Labs. So um, WARD Labs, and if you just put that into Google, it'll bring it up. And I want to say a soil sample somewhere around 23 to $25. The prices have kind of gone up and down, and I haven't sent one off lately. But yeah, so Ward Labs is a really good one, and it's like
Is it like
Agro.
user friendly to like for
Yes,
anyone, just for
yes.
anyone to?
Um,
Okay.
if I can, let me see if
Okay.
I can share my screen real quick, and then pull up something else.
So you got while you're looking for your slide, you do have a question in the chat box.
Oh, okay. Let's look at this. How do you, oh, uh, permanently get rid of field bindweed? So that is a long-term issue. The problem is bindweed, their roots can grow really, really deep. And there's a lot of, yeah, field bindweed is one of the toughest ones to get rid of. I don't want to say you'll never get rid of it, but it's pretty close to never get rid of. It's really managing the field bindweed more than anything else. We deal with it quite a bit down here. And so the best option is to really be trying to take care of it when you first see it. So hopefully before it puts out that beautiful white flower everywhere, because what that's going to mean is you're going to get more seed. So if you can identify it and get rid of it, find that arrowhead shape on that vine as it's creeping across the ground or growing up somewhere, and try and get rid of it early before it goes into that flowering stage, you're going to have a much better luck about managing it throughout the season versus trying to take care of it later after it's highly established. And so it really is trying to pay attention to that to that life stage. So if you get it young and when it's early, that is the best time to do it. And so right here, what I'm showing you is the submission form for Ward Laboratories. And so you would just type your name here, your address, phone number, email, sample information. So the date you're getting it, um, who you are. So in many cases, I'm putting this and then, putting who the grower. That way, when I get the results back, I know whose soil sample this goes to, and then the field ID. So where was this? And you can have multiple samples run through here that you want. So you could ID it however you want, field one or garden one or what A, B, however you want to do it. And then you just plug in your information. So if you did a 6 to 8 inch depth, you would put that here. This is what I was talking about right here. Make sure you put the right thing that you're planning to grow. If I'm growing tomatoes, even though that garden's in my backyard, don't type in backyard because if you type backyard, they think lawn and grass. And so you will get results based on your yard for the grass and not for your tomatoes. And so put vegetable garden or tomatoes or whatever the specific crop you're planning to grow is. And just fill out as much as you can, any comments you have. And generally, you're going to be um, selecting this S4, so routine soil sample. And again, I can't remember. and here's their website right here, and they have great instructions right there. So wordlab.com. They have great instructions on how to take the sample and how to submit this, all right there on their website. It's very user friendly. But they're out of Nebraska, not Kansas. Sorry. I think I said Kansas earlier. Perfect. All right. Are there any other questions? And I do apologize about the field bindweed not having a silver bullet, but if we discover it together, we can make millions. I promise you.
Okay. All right, we already hit that 6:30 mark, so I just want to say thank you so much, Drew, for coming on here, and I hope that you have a good vacation.
I
Um,
will.
all right, so I release a poll to everyone else on that are tuning in. So it'll be a pop-up, and if you can, just go ahead and fill that out. How you rate your understanding of the webinar that we have tonight. Any comments, any additional, topics on what we would like to cover that, that we want to or need to go into in depth? Maybe have a soil sampling how-to video. Maybe that will be an option. So definitely let me know to see if that is a topic that all of you guys want to, further dive into. And as well as chapter affiliation, as some of you are residing on the reservation, whichever chapter you're closest to, do type that in. Or if you're not on the reservation, like you're in Farmington or Albuquerque, just go ahead and type in the county. That just gives us kind of the rundown of the outreach our webinars are basically, heading to. So if you guys don't mind filling that out, I would really appreciate it. So Drew, I will request a PowerPoint from you if you don't mind. We do share that with all of our folks that are on here that are, hopped in late, or some of them, were busy and caught up with other things and they still want to see something
Nah,
from the
not a
PowerPoint.
problem. I'll probably have to send it in a PDF because it's a little big to
That's fine.
send. But yeah,
Yeah.
well,
Okay, awesome. So we'll go ahead and let you go, and we're just going to um, do some upcoming events.
all right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay. If I can work my slides, for some reason it's not working for me. All right. Okay. So for those of you that are still on here, just to let you know, we do have a seed propagation and transplanting webinar next week on the 29th. And if you want to go ahead and scan the QR code that is on the flyer, and it will take you directly straight to the registration page. If not, and if you're tuning in into your desktop, go ahead and head to our website, nsa.nmsu.edu, under upcoming events. So during this time, during the webinar, there is another event taking place, and this is located at the Twin Arrows Casino that's located out in Flagstaff. So it's called Pasture to Plate, and this is taking place on May 29th through the 31st. So this is a Dene College land grant event, and we are just showcasing what is going to be presented. So on the right side is more of cattle and ranch finances, virtual fencing, and how that can impact your ranching operation, as well as the pasture rangeland and forage insurance program, We do have beef quality assurance that's going to be happening and taking place, cattle and sheep vaccination protocol. So there's a lot that's going on the 29th. So here's the rundown for May 30th and May 31st. So if you want, this is located on their page on Facebook. If you just go ahead and search in the URL of their Dene College Land Grant Office, you'll see a post of what is going to be showcased every day from the 29th to the 31st. Okay, so we do have between May 31st through June 17th, we do have webinars which are in the making right now. They're going to be more of the horticulture type webinars. This past couple months, it was just all about livestock. So I really deeply apologize for all of my horticulturalists out here tuning in that you didn't quite see a lot of the horticulture topic webinars or workshops these past couple of months. So a lot of our feedback was toward sheep shearing, livestock, first aid, record keeping, and so forth. So the more feedback that we get on a particular topic, that we do try to hit and run with it. So we do have a herd health and rangeland management workshop. This is kind of like the rundown of what will be discussed. So this is going to be taking place on the 17th. Please ignore the time there from 5:30. That's not correct. So if you look at the agenda here, it's going to be starting at 9 all the way to 4 p.m. The location is a cow house auction barn. I'm pretty sure all of you are familiar with that auction barn. It's located in Kirtland. So the run through in the morning is going to be on nutritional requirements for beef cattle, particularly for heifers and cows that are needing additional or any supplemental nutritional requirements during this pre-breeding phase. And as well as body condition scoring and how that should be impacted for the overall health of your heifers and your cows. And as well as the New World screwworm, if none of you have heard it, that pretty much came into the U.S. and it's pretty much making an impact down in Mexico, and it's working its way up here. So how producers can deal with that, how they can identify it as well as the avian influenza. So that will be provided. Then we also have lunch that's being provided, and this is the collaboration effort that we have with Dene College. Then in the afternoon, we do have identifying native and invasive plant species. This is going to be towards rangeland, not much of horticulture. So identifying the distinctions among rangeland grasses to forbs, trees, shrubs in our area, and how to manage and preserve rangeland vegetation. So we do have these Navajo booklets that will be very helpful for you. And we will be going through that and how to read each, give examples of some of the plants that are pretty much well known in our area and how you can read that pamphlet. Then we do have RAM assessment demonstration. It is going to be presented by Dr. Casey Speckman, and identifying the appropriate methods, the timing, the location, and collecting and monitoring plants. Then we're going to be ending it with the USDA Farm Service Agency program, and this will be provided by Gerald Chavez, who is the FSA coordinator for McKinley County and San Juan County. So she's going to be providing updates on loan, disaster, and conservation programs, as well as any resources that you can access. So this will be the end results of our whole workshop day. So that is one big workshop that we had planned for June. Rest of them are going to be webinars, but we will be informing you guys along the way. So if you stay tuned into our Facebook platform, you'll get updates. So conservation planning program, pretty much everyone on here are well known to our program. That is a collaborative effort with San Juan College, I'm so sorry, Diné College land grant. This is a one-on-one assistance that we provide grazing producers and farmers. So whether you are in the Eastern or Northern Navajo agencies, you know that ACP is required to be part of your um, grazing packet or your farm packet. So if you are in need of assistance, we do this free of charge. I recommend emailing Miss Shirley Toth. Her email is located in the corner in blue, so toth@nmsu.edu. Okay, so this will go ahead. This is the last slide and we'll wrap this up. So if you are interested in joining us on Facebook, feel free. We put all of our upcoming events there. So we do have workshops that are shared 2 to 3 weeks out in advance, and as well as our webinars. All of our webinars are recorded and posted on our YouTube channel. Then we'll be sending out our newsletter shortly. So we do have an operating website. So if you go to nsa.nmsu.edu, you'll be informed with all the upcoming events. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and let you guys all go. And I appreciate you guys sticking through this webinar. And I hope that you take a lot of information back. Thank you. Called the Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project. In short, we just call ourselves the NSA Project. We're pretty much funded by the USDA, Navajo Farmers and Ranchers, and Veteran Farmers. So we pretty much have our program goal is to provide outreach and assistance for Native farmers and ranchers, and also veteran farmers and ranchers as well. So we do a lot of that in collaboration effort with none of the other Diné College land grant office. Pretty much their campus is stationed out in Tsaile, Arizona. They do have other offices through the San Juan County and McKinley County, and a lot of them are in Arizona, in the part of Tsaile area. So we also partner with COPE, which stands for Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment. Some of you may have attended some webinars that are around guardian preparation with the presenter Carol Palmer. So she does a lot of that outreach as well. And the folks from the NMSU campus, from our specialists, from Dr. Marcy Ward, Craig Gifford, and a lot of those folks that are the livestock specialists as well as horticulture specialists. So we pretty much program our webinars and our outreach based on the producer's needs. Some of you pretty much that are on here and know that the feedback that we gather from each session, we pretty much tailor how the workshops be placed throughout the whole year. So one of the things that we do is not only do we provide webinars, but we also provide workshops. And the month of April, if you guys have pretty much tuned in from our sheep shearing and flock health, that pretty much skyrocketed a lot of folks that are residing in McKinley, and a lot of Arizona producers are pretty much and I thank all of them, and especially you folks here. I know some of you attended our in-person session, so it's great to see you. So we did have our livestock first aid training that we brought back this year. In the planning phase of providing another one in the September. It's going to be located in the San Juan region area. So another goal that we have is increase our in the use of USDA programming. All of you on here are pretty much well aware of what NRCS and FSA, RD and RMA stand for and what they provide. So we do have resource webinar series that are tailored to NRCS and FSA according to the counties that we serve, so which is Cibola, San Juan, and McKinley County. So we bring a lot of the folks that are stationed out from McKinley County will be developed. Then we also have FSA office that's located in Aztec, and they provide local programs and services that the local producers can apply for and how they can apply, what programs, disaster programs, loan programs that are pretty much, you know, well known in their area, and they provide that type of resource. Another thing is increasing the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and veggies and healthy foods by Navajo families and individuals. We are